Super excited about today's episode. We'll be highlighting another veteran-owned business here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Lakeview Decks and Construction with Branden Black. We'll go over his time in the Army from the Hindu Kush and then back to Coeur d'Alene and how he went from a United States soldier to now a Decks extraordinaire. Welcome to the podcast, Branden.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, with Lakeview Construction, I got this nice, just brought a gift, Lakeview hat. It's
Lakeview Decks.
Lakeview Decks.
Yeah,
But I made a mistake.
We really specialize in decks and luxury outdoor living. So those roof covers and the decks with the fire pits, and we're about the only people that will do radiuses and bend stuff, and we're constantly experimenting, trying to throw some more flavor into it and see what we can do. So
that's awesome. Yeah, the here in Coeur d'Alene, Pacific Northwest, at least their topography here, we got the lakes,
right.
You got mountains, and a lot of the people that live on the lakes, the luxury homes, they have some steep sloping. That's got to be some modern engineering to tackle or to adapt to the steep terrain.
Well, and we work all year long too. So right now, this time of year is
not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, I'm kind of cringing going to work today because it's the wind's really blowing.
Yeah, I'll
so
do a
it's coming
podcast.
off of that lake, and yeah,
I'm spoiled in the.
So
the
thanks
nice
for
office.
bringing me in.
You're welcome. Yeah, have your guys out there. But we'll start off with why you think this area, Coeur d'Alene, Pacific Northwest, is special, and if there's any veteran community groups, organizations you'd like to highlight.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I grew up here, so obviously I'm a little biased, and I love this place.
You have a sticker that says local.
I am a local business owner.
I don't.
Born and raised.
No, I just speak for myself. But,
yeah.
As you're growing up and you only experience that one place, there's that branch out and let's explore type thing. There's got to be something better out there.
Yeah.
And I ended up circling back and coming back here. I lived in Seattle for 10 years, and just the kind of person that lives here, we're more apt to kind of communicate with each other, and networking is huge here. So that's probably my favorite aspect of here is you just meet people from, that do everything, and your network expands very fast. So, that's probably my favorite thing here. As far as communities or outreach programs and stuff like that, you're a veteran, I'm a veteran. There's New Beginnings, and it comes off of Nick Newby, who passed away. I went to school with him, actually, and he was blown up in Iraq. His mom started New Beginnings, and there's not another program that does more for veterans out there. And she's actually trying to expand right now and get into a new building.
That's awesome.
She's actually asking for help right now. So if anybody can, help them to help all of us, I would really suggest you look them up and try to participate in that fundraiser.
I'll put their link in the fundraiser
Awesome.
in the video and in the description there. But that's awesome. And I've seen that place. So it's not only for veterans, they register, get signed up, and everything is free. They go in there and it's a food pantry and anything they need, furniture. I take veterans out fishing sometimes, and they've been giving me fishing poles and tackle and stuff like that. So they're definitely
seriously in any aspect that a veteran might need help. If they're, we all hit hard times, if you're having trouble getting your bills done, or, daycare for your kids or whatever it is, you don't have a dining room table, like everything. It's pretty incredible what she's put together, and I've got a lot of respect for those guys. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that up. So going and segue into your service in the Army, go into why you joined, your experience.
Yeah, so I've been in construction since I was 13, and 2008, there was that massive crash, and I
simple economics.
could not find a job for the life of me. I was a single dad at 18, and
Man.
2008 it would have been I was 20, and I just couldn't find a job. So I'm laying there in bed, and I'm like, how do I take care of this kid? And for whatever reason, the Army flashed through my head. So I went in and no, I don't. It was so random. I have no idea what triggered it. But yeah. So the next day I went in, talked to a recruiter, and I was headed to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, a month later.
United States Army, 694529998.
I was at Fort Sill. I lap moved over to artillery at Fort Observer from infantry, and I was at Fort Sill. What time of year were you there?
Cold.
Okay.
Yeah.
When was
I got
this?
there in January.
January 2009.
Yep.
Okay. I was there. I think it was 2012. But just to kind of give perspective to people who don't know, it's cold. There's snow drifts, and wasn't used to the cold, and the guys standing out there in formation, and it's
the wind.
Yeah, the wind is
it's flat. So yeah, it was. When we got there, it was actually everything was covered in ice. It was a big ice storm. And, usually you get to basic training, you got the drill sergeants that come in, and they just, they like to jump on the bus and get everybody freaked out. And, it was so bad they actually got on the bus. And this is more of a mind play, but they got on the bus and they're like, "Hey guys, so we're your drill sergeants. Make sure when you get off the bus, just take it easy. We don't want you to slip and fall." And I'm like, "This is a setup."
Yeah.
It's a trap! It's a trap!
They didn't want people scrambling and slipping on the ice and breaking an arm or something. So.
Yeah, they want you to get hurt later in training.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So where'd you go after Fort Sill?
Well, I went to Fort Eustis, Virginia, and then so I actually joined as the reserves because I figured I'd, dip my toe in the water, see if I liked the Army or not, and if I decided I liked it, I could go active, which I found out later it's backwards. It's easier to go from active to reserves.
Oh, yeah. You're actually, when you end active duty, you go into the inactive reserves.
Yeah, so the tough thing was what I found out, because I actually tried to go active, but they only select a certain couple MOSs, and, so there's a whole bunch of fine print I didn't know about. But anyway, I joined reserves, got done with my schooling in Virginia, and I think it was the second week I was at school, and I got a call that was like, "Hey, you guys are deploying." So straight out of AIT, I went to Kuwait. So that was my first deployment. Was Port of Shuaibah, Kuwait. I was working the ports there.
Okay. What was your MOS, your training school you went to?
So I do logistics. I'm a 88 hotel, which
Awesome.
is a cargo specialist. Yeah. So
that's super important and the expertise that goes into, did you work with aircraft at all? Like loading aircraft?
Yep.
Because there was right before we got to Afghanistan in Bagram, there was they were loading 7 tons on the aircraft, and it broke loose and it caused the aircraft to crash. So
I was in Afghanistan I think I know exactly what you're talking about. And it went straight up, and then it. Yeah. I was actually there when it happened.
Yeah. So it's super important, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into it.
You wouldn't think so, but yeah, you got to strategically place every truck on the plane, and it's even down to how much everybody weighs on the plane, and where they sit, because they actually disperse the people through the plane too, depending on if you're a fat body or.
Yeah. Everyone, run for the hills! It's Fatzilla!
So yeah, it's interesting. Most people don't think about any of that, but you can't fight the fight without your beans and bullets, right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you were stationed in Bagram? Whenever you went?
My second deployment, okay. The main body was in Bagram, but I was actually in Logar Province, Fob Shank. So I was there for my deployment, which was pretty that was pretty gnarly.
Pretty spicy.
Yeah, it was fun. But
awesome. So you go in, reserves, but then you get activated a ton, which that seemed to be the case for a lot of guys. When I was active duty, but went reserve unit, and when you're first there, a lot of the guys in the reserve units had more active duty time than some active duty guys who went active duty and came into the unit. Just because that tempo was just so high, and we're an all volunteer, military force.
Are joining up to fight for the future.
Or so.
Well, you also have to think just from a strategy and financial standpoint, right? So, if you activate an active duty unit, you still have to have somebody fill that spot of that unit that just left, right? Because they still have a job to do back in the States. So when that happens, you have to cover down. Well, if you send a reserve unit, they still have their rear element, right? So they still have their footprint. You don't have to cover anything down. You just send those guys, they come back, and then it's a new rotation.
Yeah.
So, and then National Guard, like you probably know this, but National Guard's not really they're not supposed to, well, it's National Guard, right?
Right.
But you end up seeing those,
Guard.
Yeah, you end up seeing those guys overseas all the time too.
Oh yeah.
So, and it comes down to a financing thing. It's just cheaper.
Yeah.
So,
you went active for a couple deployments, came home, and when you got out EAS'd, how was that transition? Did you move back to the area here?
So I'm actually still in. I've been in 16 years now.
Going for the 20?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it'd be foolish not to, right? But yeah, so I'm still in. My unit's out of Marysville. I ended up moving back here, just work-related stuff, and I kind of stayed in construction. I've done I've ventured off on a couple things, but always circled back to that, and I moved back here in 2017. While I was in Seattle, I ended up working for one of the pioneers in deck building.
Karate. Yeah.
Okay.
Most people, they think of a deck and it's like, how hard could it be?
That goes into my next point or next question.
I'm stealing the show from you.
No, you're perfect. Can you please do it? No. How did you get into decks? And a lot of times the construction of the decks, and you are way more. This is your specialty, but there's more. I'd say risk, but there's more engineering in terms of the house and stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't really realize it, but it's its own little world. And basically, so what happened is in 2006, I want to say, there was a bunch of decks that fell off of places and balconies that collapsed, and one specifically in California, it killed 20 college students that were out on this balcony, and it fell, I want to say 7 stories.
Oh,
don't quote me on it, but enough to be a big deal. Mm-hmm. And then that's when they kind of wrote the code and was like, hey, we need to do something about this.
Yeah.
These are actually dangerous. So now it's down to your flashing, to where you put your lags and how those are inserted, and your footings and blah blah blah. Most people think just I'll just slap some pier blocks down and build off of that. That's fine.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So anyways, the landlord that I had when I lived in Seattle, his brother was come to find out, he's a premier deck builder. He's one of the pioneers that started playing with stuff and figuring out how to bend things and do let's make it more than a deck type of stuff. So I started working for him. I learned a lot. And yeah, I ended up moving here in 2017. I worked for a local guy. I won't say his name, but he's not the most stable man. And, he threatened to fire me for the 3rd time over nonsense.
Don't do that to a veteran.
Yeah. I remember he brought me into the office and he sat me down and he was yelling at me about a field call that I made that was actually the right call. And he said, if it happens again, you're fired. And he's like, if you think well, yeah, he told me I was going to be fired, and I started chewing on it. Then we had our Monday meeting, and he looked around the room and he said, if you guys think this is easy and you think you can do it any better than me, go ahead and take a shot at it. And that got me thinking even more.
Motivational speech for you.
And I tried to start a company 2 or 3 times. They failed, which I say failed, but they were massive successes in the way that I learned a lot from
Education's not free.
Exactly. And yeah, man, I was like, this guy's gonna fire me. I'm gonna end up, working at Arby's in the middle of winter. Like, I got a pregnant wife and 2 kids at home. Like, I gotta do something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I shook everybody's hand. I said, I'm out of here. And I had my final paycheck, paid rent. I had $200 left over.
Wow.
And a handful of tools, a Ford Explorer that was about to blow up. And yeah, man, I just started hitting the pavement and taking the lumps and trying to figure out, how do you make this work?
Scary.
Yeah, but it was one of those things, man. You got family counting on you. You got these little kids that are looking at you, expecting you to provide, and I couldn't take failure as an option this time, and just ran with it. Very long days.
That's awesome.
For a long time, but it kind of it paid off. So
that's great. And you guys have a great reputation, and can you talk in the luxury decks? Can you kind of go into, because in my experience, it almost makes the home, because you hear a lot of times in real estate terminology, indoor outdoor living, but being that our terrain is so steep on the because we're glacial, the steep
it's unique.
Yeah, it's unique. But I think, in my opinion, it improves the quality of life. It's exponentially, because you get to experience outside. It's almost like you're in a tree house.
It makes you want to sit outside. You know what I mean? Especially if the space is built in a way that like facilitates you sitting outside. It really pulls you out there, and it gives you something to hang out at. Like, you had us over to kind of look and design your deck and everything.
Yeah.
And, you have such a beautiful view that it's like, if you just leave it a steep yard with, this sketchy deck, then
that's like 90s construction. And
yeah, exactly. Like, you want to be able to get out there and see that view, like that most of the world doesn't get. So, but yeah, it's fun designing them for sure, and seeing, like, turning somebody's space into something that they can actually enjoy. So
that's awesome. Now, goes into my last question. You were in the military, experience with that, life experiences, deployments, coming back, taking the plunge to start your own business. Has any of the experiences of your time in service, being in the military, being in the Army, carried over and played a part in your business?
Yeah, 100%. Number one is just the resilience, right? So, just not accepting failure, not accepting defeat. There's always a way through it. Sometimes that means you got to really buckle down and grind harder. But, that's one aspect that I attribute is I just don't take no for an answer. So that would be one. Leadership. I feel like I have a unique leadership style, and I've picked a lot of that up from my time in the military. So a lot of people think that you just, you kind of whip the guys and you have those guys out there making you money and life's great. But there's a lot of psychology behind everything. So those kind of leaders, they don't really have that respect, right? So I don't want to go work for somebody that just yells at me and tells me to, get to work.
Leadership.
Right.
I want to see the guy out there with his bags on.
Lead by example.
Yeah, leading by example. I want to know that the guy cares about me, that, he's actually, if I'm going through something at home, he can recognize that, because you know, in the military as a leader, you're not just looking at what they're producing, you're looking at what's their mental state, and you're accountable for it as well, right?
Right.
If you have a guy that ends up trying to kill himself and ends up in the hospital, the first thing your command team's asking is like, how did this happen?
Right.
You know? So I take all that kind of stuff serious too. If my guy is struggling to pay his bills, or, you know, his kid's sick or something like that, he's not producing. Just from a business standpoint, he's not producing. So,
and the reason I ask that too, because the point I'm trying to get to the audience is that when you hire, you know, a veteran-owned business, people think I'm, you know, doing something good for a veteran, but really it's for the client, it's for the person, that they're actually getting a top-notch service. Not saying that there's not businesses out there that are not veterans, they're not great, but there's an added layer of professionalism, of experience.
Well, there's a value system that we've had beat into us, right? So, so that whole value system, we're expected to live by that in the military, and you're held accountable to do that. If you fall short of those values, you know, there's a price to pay for it. So that's been ingrained in us. So I'm constantly, I'll lose money to make sure that I'm doing right by the client. If they're unhappy, like, I'm going to come back and make it right, you know? And
that's important, because not saying every contractor, builder out there is, you know, no good, but it seems that most, in my experience, you almost get, I'm going to say scammed, but you get taken advantage of. And that's why it's good to highlight, you know, the ones.
Well, once you write that final check, it's now a gamble on if you can ever get a hold of them again, right?
Right.
Once that final check's written, it's, you know, shake hands, see you later. For us, like, I end up being friends with a lot of the clients that I work with. Awesome. and touch base with them years down the road, you know? So I feel like that's something I focused heavily on, is customer service and branding. And
Lakeview Decks and Construction.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing your military experience and the newbie beginnings and stuff, and getting that out there is important. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
All right.